My mom's definitely joining too.
Yay, we're gonna have moms in the room. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Fierce Female Friday. It's the final Friday of Q3. Uh, it's the final Friday of Q3. And we are super excited to be together as we are welcoming our attendees into the room. We love for you to drop into the chat where you're watching from today. We love to kind of in our minds visualize, are you at home? Are you in the office? Are you in the mountains, at the beach? Where are you? At the Eiffel Tower watching? Like, share with us in the comments. And then of course, we always love to connect on social. So let's do Instagram today. Drop in your link, not your handle, but the whole link to make it super easy for people to connect with you. And let's support each other there. Let's get connected there as we step into the final countdown, the final 3 months, the final quarter of 2023. It feels a little weird, but this year it hasn't felt as fast as the last few years. I felt like this year kind of um mellowed out a little bit. Maybe that was simply because there was more in person. I don't know, but let us know. Did this year go crazy for you? Are you shocked that it's going to be Q4 basically on Sunday? Let us know what's going on with you. I am super excited about the show today. If you read any of the promo around it, you know that our topic is one that we've all been seeking guidance on, and that is overcoming objections. So let's get started here. The thing is, inside the real estate industry, we know that objections are like these little puzzles waiting to be solved. And when someone says, I'm not sure, or I want to wait till the rates drop, or it's too expensive to buy now, or the myriad of fill in the blank objections that you get, we know that as real estate professionals that you need special strategies to really turn those objections into opportunities, not only for you building your business, but for your clients, helping them get over those limiting thoughts. So during the next hour, we are going to explore some secrets, some techniques that these amazing experts are going to share with us. And we have really unique perspectives being shared today. This is really, I think, going to stir us up a little bit. And I think we all are ready for that, right? We're all ready to kind of leave the limiting beliefs that we've actually started carrying, that our clients have been speaking into us. Let's shed those and leave with some valuable insight that's going to help you succeed not only in your real estate businesses, but in your everyday life, because we know real estate is a lifestyle business. So you deal with these questions whether you've got your name badge on or not. So in addition to the full bios that we're going to share about our amazing guests, what I'm going to ask them all to do is we're going to go around the Zoom room and we're going to have each one of them share who they are and a snapshot of the leadership journey that brought them to their roles today. So Laine, let's start with you, my lovely.
Thank you, Debra. I'm Laine Kostegian. I'm a strategic sales director with Rocket Mortgage. And what that means is that I work as a relationship broker amongst real estate professionals in the many ways to pair with Rocket Mortgage. I also moonlight, if you've seen me out at shows. I'm like the industry relations gal in the real estate space. And I'm leaning into more of a strategy role and really making sure that threads are tied across our family of companies, Rocket companies, and making sure that we're showing up for the real estate community as a whole, really a little bit more tied together. So I do a little bit of everything when it comes to real estate at Rocket Mortgage. My leadership role has really come through a lot of different industries. Sales has always been my backbone. I see my mom is on and she is an incredible saleswoman herself. So thank you for instilling that in me. And I'm born and raised in Detroit. That's Rocket's, home base here. So it was really nice to be able to work for the company and really get in with the real estate space as we're prioritizing real estate agents more than ever.
I love that. Well, and I can confirm this, Laine. Before I met you, I didn't really know what Rocket Mortgage was. I didn't.
Yeah.
Once I met you, it was like, oh, I get it. I get it. So we're so grateful to have you. We're so grateful to have Rocket Mortgage as a sponsor of WomanUP, and consistently over the last few years, whether it was bringing people or writing a nice big check for us, we are so, so very grateful. All right, let's go to you, Karen. Share a little bit about who you are for those that don't know you yet.
Uh-oh. All right. So thank you so much for having me. Hello, Woman Up, and happy Friday. I'm Karen Stone. I currently reside in beautiful Park City, Utah. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. My mom is online as well. She has taught me how to overcome objections. We have obviously bantered a lot over our many years as mother and daughter. And I actually started in the business in 2008 in New York City. So I have seen markets go up and down in one of the most challenging places to practice. And this may come up, Debra might mention this, but I also am a two-time graduate of the Manhattan Comedy School with a focus on stand-up comedy and pity laughs. I am also an Inman ambassador. I'm an Inman contributor, and I have played many, many, many leadership roles, from the alumni president for Indiana University in Metro New York. And I was an RA and president of my board, like you name it. If there's an organization, I'm usually involved. So thanks for having me.
I love that. Yeah, you definitely are not a wallflower.
No, no, I'd stay away from the wall.
I love it. I love it so much. Okay, Julie, this is the first time you've been on the show. We're so excited to have you. So tell the community a little bit about yourself.
For sure. And I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Julie Eccleston. I am an executive loan officer with Rocket Mortgage. So I actually just celebrated my 16th season with the organization, very, very long time, and have loved it. But throughout my career with Rocket, I've done a whole bunch of things, right? Obviously, I was a banker originator for a very long time, spent a couple years as an underwriter, and actually a year ago, just came back to being boots on the ground, one-on-one with clients, which I love. But previously, I had spent 4 years as a senior director for the organization, leading a purchase team of about 15 to 20 bankers, much to Laine's point, saying, hey, what can we do to do our best work, and making sure that we're really supporting those within our community. So I'm thrilled to be here because I love leadership. I love objections, or overcoming objections. No one loves an objection. And really just making home ownership happen. So I'm excited.
Sorry, you could tell I had a little bit of an issue with the pup barking earlier. So hopefully she's chill now. Well, she's sort of chill. This topic, this conversation around overcoming objections, it really does seep into so many parts of our lives, right? I mean, you overcome objections with toddlers at home, all the way to bosses at work, right? And so I'm so excited to have the three of you here today sharing your wisdom. And this kind of format of a wisdom session where we're really tackling one specific topic the whole entire show is actually really one of my favorites, because we're going to really dig in. And that's a reminder for those of you who are here with us live. Use the chat. If you've got questions, if there is something that you have been dealing with around the topic of overcoming an objection, please ask the question and we will do our very best to help you walk through that with some answers. Okay, so let's dig into our first question. This is fun. So what are the common objections that you all encounter in your roles, and why do you feel that the objections are arising so frequently? Karen, let's start with you.
All right. So what I've experienced is that whether my buyers are cash buyers or they're financing, most of these buyers expect the market to crash. I'm going to wait until it crashes, until prices come down. And I think what most of these buyers are remembering is that if they're old enough, and I'm going to get to that. We have to put into context what happened before COVID and after COVID. They think a crash is like 2008. None of us can predict the future, but they don't seem to realize that the real estate market was in a completely different place back then with inventory, interest rates, the job market before the recession. So I've been through many of these cycles back in New York. I started in literally March of 2008, and it's fairly predictable. However, I think it keeps coming up because our buyers, many of our buyers were not buying real estate back in 2008. They're millennials, they're younger. This is their first, this is their only. It's like talking to a toddler about 9/11. Like, they don't understand the concept of what happened and why we're not allowed to go into the airport, right? So we just have to keep defending this objection because they just don't know what it was before. And many of them don't know interest rates like back when they were 5 or 6%.
Yeah.
All was the 2.5. So to them, this is extreme.
Yeah, I think we've already seen it in the chat that high interest rates is one that's coming over and over and over again. And you mentioned it on the consumer side, Karen, and that is that if somebody hasn't purchased a home in the last 15 years, all they saw was all these great interest rates all the way along. And then when they're ready to buy, they're like, wait a minute, these are like triple what they were. Like when when I started thinking about or dreaming or building my vision board on Pinterest. It's the same for agents. And so, we really want the leaders who are here, the broker owners, the executives who are leading teams, to also remember like that we need to be giving grace on grace to our agents who've been in the business for less than 15 years, because they've never had to sell a home when the interest rate was an objection. Right? Like, it's just not happened. And so let's dig into that side. Julie and Laine. Julie, let's start with you. Like, what are you hearing from your side of the high interest rates?
Yeah, definitely a thing, right? Because I work with a lot of first-time home buyers, and really, I think it comes down to affordability and like FOMO, right? FOMO is real, and the fact that, like, to Karen's point, if this is your first time buying a home, you have no idea that if you really look statistically out, like the average interest rate over the past 60 years was like 7.75. So this is actually very normal. We've just been so abnormal for so long, and that everybody is waiting for the crash. And ironically, I was telling Debra, like, this is perfect timing. I taught an entire class on this today. So I've got lots of statistics if you want to. And it really just is like the byproduct of what we have been going through, and that sticker shock as housing prices are going up, as, wages aren't necessarily going there, and making it affordable and making it be a reality for them. And, if anyone could make a DeLorean and go back and buy Apple stock in 1980, I think that they would all say they would do it. But it really just is like resetting that perspective of, hey, let me share a little bit of information with you of why now really is a great time to buy for your clients. And it's a lot of reassurance. That is certainly for sure.
Well, something that you just said, I feel like agents are constantly saying it's a great time to buy. And so let's put a pin in that. And also, yes, please, Julie, we want all of the data. Like, we want it all.
A lot of it.
So however we can get that from you, maybe a one sheet or something, that would be so tremendous. That would be such a great help.
Sure.
Laine, you're in a very different seat, right? Sure. You're representing a mortgage company, but you're not actually doing the mortgage stuff. So sure. How are the objections kind of showing up on your side of the coin?
Well, I think being a national and an online lender, I mean, I hear a very mixed bag of why somebody doesn't want to work with us. I think right now it's similar to agents. So the agent market is a little bit oversaturated, where there's agents everywhere, right? And the objection is, why you instead of somebody else? I know why it's not Rocket is we haven't necessarily differentiated ourselves and done the best job communicating some of those things to agents. We're #1 in client satisfaction for 12 years running. Like, we're really good with clients, we're not really good at our agent partners. And that's something that we're very actively working on. But translating that to an agent's day to day is, how are you marketing yourself, and how are you differentiating yourself to your prospective clients, and how are you handling their objections? Are you doing it in a defensive way? Are you doing it in a very exploratory way and sharing, hey, like, I totally get where you're having that opinion of, not working with a local lender, or not working with somebody who lives in the neighborhood that you want to buy, or somebody that's been in the business for 20 years, or somebody that's making TikToks. I mean, like, you could hear any objection, right, across the board of why you don't want to work with somebody, but what are the reasons that make somebody want to work with you? And it's not just because, like, you have a sweet blazer on, you work at a cool office, the MLS people, right? It's like, what about you specifically as a human being, as well as your professionalism, can really tie the threads and help them reach their goals? So that's something that I'm hearing, and I know I'm going to keep hearing it. There's a long way to go on our end, to fix some of those, I think, reputational issues in the market. But it's the same thing, as an agent, is what are you doing reputationally to really earn the business, rather than just expecting it from that acquaintance that you know.
Yeah. Well, I loved the example that you gave in kind of the prep, which was like when you have a bad experience with a hairstylist.
Yeah.
Like,
don't go back
it's
ever.
really, really hard to go back to them. I mean, unless they're a bestie and that it was just a bad day, like, they're pretty screwed out of that business going forward.
For sure.
And that's a really great reminder, right? Like, because we do tend to repeat things like it's a great time to buy, or the interest rates are not gonna go up, or they're gonna go down, like that. We make these kind of bold statements because of how it's traditionally been in the industry, and then all of a sudden, oops, like it changed. The interest rates did go up, and we have a bunch of marketing that says, like, this is the time to buy because the interest rates are at 2% or 3%, and now they're at 6 or 7, and people are like, well, wait a minute, how can it always be a good time to buy? There is a level of, how do we repair the trust, right? How do we help them trust us? So let's talk about when we've gotten these objections that you're talking about, and how, like, do you have specific examples of when you've overcome the objection that we can talk about today? And let me preface that by saying, I mean, I feel like in nearly every one of our wisdom sessions, or even on the show, we talk about active listening. Like, how are we listening? Because we tend to, want to solve the problem even before it comes out of someone's mouth. That doesn't always serve us well. So how do you not only involve listening, but other strategies to help you really overcome the objections that you're experiencing? Julie?
So I think for me, it really is just a matter of starting with where that person is, right? And trying to get their perception baseline of, like, how are they seeing the situation? How are they seeing the world? And just kind of have a seek to understand. Like, if we think about it, there's so much news out there that is going to tell you it literally is the worst time to buy, and that home builders are scared, and that interest rates are through the roof, and that the world is falling apart, right? And so I always start with, like, you know what, Debra, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. If you don't mind me asking, what are you seeing that is going to cause rates to go down, or housing prices to go down, or an imminent crash, over the next 6 months to the year? And then really letting them talk of, like, hey, this is my, oh, it's an election year, or, oh, Joe Biden told me, or, oh, my uncle Bob down the street has a crystal 8 ball that said that, hey, it is not going to be. Okay, awesome. At least we know what that starting point is. And I always make it a point to never disagree with a client. And I always just kind of leave it with, like, oh my gosh, well, thank you for sharing your perspective. Do you mind if I share what I'm seeing? And 97% of the time, they'll be like, yeah, sure. And it opens up that opportunity to have a really candid conversation of, hey, interest rates, like, awesome. There's a lot going on in our financial markets right now. And if we look at the projection from key players, they're saying, hey, we're probably going to be hanging out here for a while. I am also of the thought that, like, eventually they are going to go down. Eventually interest rates are going to go down. When? I don't know. But why not put yourself into a position that you can take advantage of that? Because if we wait until interest rates go down to buy, then in reality, you're probably putting yourself into a place where you're going to have so much more competition. So your ultimate affordability probably isn't going to be that different, besides what your interest rate is. And even give the example of 2020, 2021, we all remember it, where it's like, hey, you've got to go 50,000 over ask, waived inspection on your firstborn child in order to get an offer accepted in any market coast to coast. And a lot of times those perspectives and that compare and contrast will help continue the conversation and help kind of overcome the objection of like, okay, well, that is why now maybe isn't a bad time. And I also kind of focus a lot on speed to the need
Ooh,
of,
speed to the need. All
yes,
right.
that the reality is look, if your family is growing and you're having like your third child, like your 13-year-old son isn't going to be sharing a bedroom with a toddler, so an interest rate doesn't really matter. So like, what's the speed to that need to be able to encourage you to feel like, okay, great, I do need to go ahead, I do need to make this decision. And that's why for me it makes sense to buy now.
Mm. I like how you give these two questions, right? What are you seeing that you think is going to cause what you're waiting for? What, fill in the blank. And then the reminder, let's not argue with them. Let's simply ask them if they're willing to hear our perspective. That feels very it feels very open and interested, right? The listening is definitely woven in there, and it is putting it back on them, right? Because I think that a lot of times you hear people parroting things that they heard that they didn't actually research, right? And we've seen it in lots of areas. Interest rates is clearly one of them. Laine, how about you?
I really am a firm believer in Miller Hyman training. It's traditionally a business to business, a B2B focus, but I love to use it, on a B2C level. And there's a couple techniques there that I practice all the time. One of them is just their meeting prep. They call it a green sheet. If you Google it, you can deep dive it, and it's phenomenal. It walks you through all the kinds of questions that you want to ask, how you want to respond to it, who's in the meetings, and it allows you to really plan out, like, what objections am I expecting? And I think when you can prepare for those, you can breathe through it a little bit more rather than going unprepared. I mean, I think about this webinar right now, right? Like, we all went through a document, it's organized, there is a plan, so there's this flow. Of course, things are going to happen unexpectedly, but the more that you prepare for some of those conversations, the better off that you are. The other thing they talk a lot about in Miller Hyman is called golden silence.
Mm.
And it sounds a little bit goofy, but really taking a breath before you answer back allows you to calm your nervous system. It allows you to formulate your thoughts. And it's really a psychological power play. It's kind of strange, but you're taking the power back by sharing your thoughts a little bit slower. The other thing that I love, and this has absolutely been a game changer for mindset, especially right now, because it is kind of feast or famine in real estate. I get it. Like, the market is in a very unique spot, is mapping out what are your best case outcome, and then that's your minimum success outcome. And what's really going to happen is probably somewhere on a scale, rather than, yes, they bought the house, or they're ghosting me because they're not answering the phone. There's probably 30 other things in between there. A really good example, and we hear this all the time at Rocket, is they're really not mortgage ready, right? They don't have enough savings for a down payment. Their credit score needs repair. That doesn't mean those people aren't wanting to buy a home in the near future. They may just have to take a different path or different steps. Now, we've got a really great credit repair program. We just launched a credit card that allows people to use their rewards towards a down payment on their home or to the principal and interest, which is really incredible. Check it out. It's called the Rocket Card. But that's still a win, right? Like, the win isn't always, I'm pre-approved and I'm making an offer on the house. It's, I have this person that's now in my sphere of influence and I'm nurturing them. It may just be in a different way. It may take longer, but it's still a win. And if you can help somebody improve their credit score, if you can help somebody balance their money, look at their bills and how you're spending, We've got another great tool. I don't mean to sound like a massive plug for us. It's called Rocket Money. It used to be called Truebill, but we acquired that, and it's truly a nurturing tool for your clients to look at. What are you paying? Like what's happening with your bills? Ladies, if you like to shop, the emails are going to be offensive to you. They're going to be like, Debra, you spent X amount of dollars at this restaurant. 20% of your income went here, here, and here. But it's eye-opening for people that aren't aware of that, right?
Yeah.
That's still a win. And really being able to map some of those out are some of my favorite just techniques of handling objections, is really being prepared for it and really making sure I'm not leaning into like a pass or fail mentality, because that can be daunting. If it's, I didn't get the one outcome that I wanted, if you hear no a lot, like that's really, really tough, right? So if you
Yeah.
can find those incremental wins in between and you can see that trajectory of where they're going, that can be very helpful.
Well, and what's coming to me, and I think maybe Renee Roque is actually talking about it, like that we can step into helping them, counseling them financially, right? Like if those are the objections, and that is where having a great mortgage partner comes into play. Because again, to all of you out there who have real estate licenses, you do not have mortgage licenses, right? And so that's where having a great business partner comes into play, where you can say, gosh, those are solid points as to why you aren't ready to move forward. And I have the perfect person. I do love the two additional ideas that you gave, Laine, the Rocket card, Rocket Money. I didn't feel like you were doing a sales pitch. So there's that. It's important to me because those are great. Like if somebody's feeling like that they don't have enough money to pay their mortgage, like they're looking at the cost of houses and thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have that. This would be a great, an answer to that. Well, let's see where your money is actually going. Right. I remember when Drew and I first got married, we went through like this whole like money financial, like know where your money is. And one of the statements that really stuck with me, and this is like 20 years ago, was you tell your money where it goes. Your money doesn't tell you where it goes. And if it was so profound, and I didn't really realize it back then because I didn't have all the financial responsibilities, but those kind of tools help you see it. So let's definitely get the links for both of those things into the recap for sure. Karen, please tell me you've got like some kind of like stand-up bit or like some kind of comic relief on really like how you actually tackle the overcoming an objection.
Well, I will say that my mom is on and she's my bookkeeper and she's probably taking these notes, like, because she always tells me, mom here, accountant here, like, and telling me I spend too much money. So that's your comedic relief right there. Sorry, mom, I had to point that out. I was gonna start with, so at Inman in Vegas, there was a gentleman named Rene Rodriguez. He's a coach, and it inspired I think that inspired me to contact Debra and was like, we've got to do something here. And he literally said these words. He said, is it a bad time to buy or is it a bad time to finance? And our buyers tend to clump them together, right? So is it really a good time for them to buy and just a crappy time for them to finance, but they can finance and then refinance? Like they're two different things. And that was like mind blowing to me, that why didn't I ever think of that? Like those are two very separate things. Anyway, side note, I have been channeling a lot of Phil M. Jones, who's the author of Exactly What to Say, with questions that he poses, like, this may not be for you, or how would you feel if, imagine if, we have three options. Honestly, my ideal scenario came to me in January when I did not prompt this buyer at all. She said to me, I know the market is going to shift and inventory is going to get tighter and demand is going to increase. And we want to buy when like right now. And she literally went into contract within like 4 weeks, which was amazing, right? On the flip side, I have a buyer at the moment who is really not sure where she wants to be, whether it's Park City or abroad, whether she'll rent or she'll buy. She admitted being in analysis paralysis. So I'm trying the Phil M. Jones technique of how would you feel if like the home you saw today was X dollar amount more in a year? How would you feel if it was less? Imagine if you bought now and got to move along with your dreams of traveling. How would you feel if you never got to travel because you were waiting for the market to soften? And of course, I'm listening for these clues. If she's talking about traveling or complains about the stress of the home search, is it really the home search or the fact that maybe her previous realtor dropped the ball and she missed out on opportunities and now she's upset, right? And so she didn't get it when prices were lower. We always say if the one who asks the most questions is the one in control. So I think we've got to ask the questions, and I think we also have to, I'm always mindful that I cannot be more attached to the outcome than my clients. And great. If they don't, fine, as long as I'm not the one pressuring them. They've got enough pressure as it is. Selling in New York, you know, there will be times when like, kind of like in 2020, 2021, where you're like, okay, you see it, you got to make a decision, you got to pay more. Like the market applies enough pressure. It shouldn't be on us to pressure them. It should be on us to help them process it. So
that's so good. That's such a great reminder. I mean, we can be that safe place for our clients, you know, where they do feel they feel seen and heard and honored and respected. That's sensational. I have to look up Phil M. Jones.
Oh, he's phenomenal. I have these he has these role play cards that a few people that I know like created them. And so like you're on a listing appointment, will you lower your commission? And you can literally role play using his techniques to get to the answers. So
yeah, I think that, you know, what I'm hearing already is that part of overcoming objections is simply being prepared. Right. Like, right. So if you're thinking, gosh, being prepared, how do I get prepared? It feels like the first thing all of us can do is just take out our journal or a phone or a laptop and just start writing out every single one of them. Like just start there, just get them out, get them out of yourself and start, you know, walking through some of these techniques with each one of them. You know, try each one of them on for size and see how it feels, right? Because our consumers, our clients, our friends, our family are going to feel when we believe what we're saying and when we don't. And so part of that, we all know, is feeling like what we're saying is truth. And so figure out which one of these makes the most sense for you. We have talked about how objections can become opportunities rather than obstacles, but I really want to dig into examples of an objection that when you addressed it in your own way, right? Whether it's being prepared, having the questions, you know, doing the reflective conversations, like when you did that and it actually led to a significant sale or a stronger client relationship, like help give us hope with how these techniques worked for you. Laine, how about you?
Yeah, I think hearing no or an objection can be, like I mentioned earlier, kind of daunting. But if you look at it as like a step in learning about somebody, you're really learning about an individual, like Julie was mentioning earlier. Like, where are they coming from? Where's their knowledge coming from? Do they have valid opinions on some of these things, right? But you're understanding their psychology. This has happened to me multiple times as an example. And just recently, actually at WomanUP, when we were in Oceanside, because I was sitting down with somebody who's a leader of a large brand, and immediately they're like, oh, I don't need to talk to you. We already have a lending partner. I'm like, literally everybody has a lending partner. Every deal that you're on, there's a lender on it. Like, I got it, you know, like let's just have a conversation. And so immediately I was shut down, and we're sitting having a meal next to each other. I'm like, okay, I'm not giving up here. And so what I found out is they do have a lending partner that's a national, you know, large brand. And I started digging a little bit deeper about what's working really well. You know, I'm working on some different strategic partnerships. Like, what can I learn from you? What's going great? Then I started asking what's not going great. You know, like if you could do it all over again, what would you do a little bit differently? And this gal pointed out one specific product that their current partner doesn't do very well. well, we're the #1 in the nation for it. And I said, well, why don't we do this? If you have people that are having an issue with that, send it my way. Send everything else to your current partner, but you're already not sending it, this one product here. And this has happened across many brands, many individual agents. I think that's a unique thing with lending right now is you can have 50 partners for 50 different reasons, and your clients need creative solutions right now. They need a roster of people that they can talk to about what's best. I think this can also be used from like an objection, because this is the conversation I had with this gal is that, exploring a little bit more about us will give you either two things. One, it will confirm that you're in the right place right now. Or two, it'll allow you to see what other options are out there. And so it's a win-win either way, just by learning, because yes, I'm going to stay with my current lender for this specific product and this specific client. Could be the same conversation with an agent. I'm working with this agent already. Well, maybe they're not getting you into the home. Maybe they don't know about these pocket listings over here. Maybe they're not a part of this referral network that we call WomanUP, right? Like there's all these things that could be a little bit better or different, or it confirms that they're in the exact same spot that they should be. And we should congratulate them for being there and not be like salty that they're going with somebody else. There is plenty of business out there, but really just having that mentality, like it's okay to hear no, dig a little bit deeper, learn a little bit, that even if you can get, maybe it's a person that you're buying a house, that you want to buy a home, and maybe it's their cousin actually wants to do a lease, that you can be on the agreement. That's still a win. That's somebody in your sphere of influence. And I think really looking again at that scale of how you define success is really, really important.
Yeah, well, it's a great reminder that there are all sorts of yeses that we can be looking for. And that if we show up at the table with an abundance mindset that says, okay, well, that was a no for that. I love the example of, okay, yeah, no, I already got a loan person, as I know that those of you who are in the chat have heard, I know another real estate agent, or I know 50, right? And that's why I'm a proponent of not leading with what you do for a living, right? Because there's another real estate agent out there. But if you do start with something that you're really passionate about, or a specific type of real estate, right, that you focus on, that kind of opens up the other person to being a little less stiff about leaning into a conversation with you. It kind of opens that door. So that's so beautiful. Karen,
Well,
how about you?
Debra, I want to share really quick the conversation that was a little bit awkward at first. We're now expanding to a national partnership and exploring like that, because they were very surprised and welcomed with that one product that we were able to offer, that we're now looking at it. Like it's cool to explore those things, because you never really know what's down that path unless you explore it. And it's something that if you didn't explore it, you're going to miss out on it anyways, right? So you might as well learn, and it's kind of beautiful what can come out of some of those tough conversations.
Yeah, and even inside like the agency of real estate, because we real estate professionals, realtors need to be careful that they're not like trying to poach someone else's client, right? And so I love the like what's working, what's not working, because sometimes it could be a connection where you're helping them find a contractor or somebody to, help paint or pave their driveway, or there's a variety of ways to, create relationship with someone where you're doing it in an ethical, client focused, client forward way. And I'm thrilled to hear that it turned into, multiple conversations, and now you're putting together a partnership. That is very hope-filled. Great, great answer, Laine. Thank you. Karen, how about you? What's happening in your world? What objections have you been able to kind of flip and create either a cool sales moment or a stronger client relationship?
Sure. So I think that it does come down to the mindset of the professional, right? If I look at the challenges, I have a difficult buyer, I have a difficult seller, they don't want to get off the fence. I once had a manager in New York who, we went through a lot of these. She called them opportunity markets. It's not a bad market. It's not a buyer's market. It's not a seller's market. It is an opportunity market. There are tremendous opportunities right now for both buyers and sellers, if you truly look at it. And so we, as the professionals, have to change our language and our attitudes about it. You know, obviously we've got sellers. I don't remember what the stat was, but it was some crazy high number, like 60% of homeowners have an interest rate under 5%. Why would they move, right? So they're sticking to where they are. Buyers are stuck because they don't want to pay to spend, you know, have the rate higher than 5%. Sellers are saying, I don't know where else I would go, right? And so the whole cycle is just clogged. And again, I've been through this so many times. We have to unclog it. And so coming up with creative ways to unclog it. So getting that seller who might say, I don't know where I'm going to go. I need more time to find something to buy because there's so many other people that are in the same spot as me. Well, how about you do a lease back? How about you stay in your home and you rent it for a year and then you, or however many months, right? And you give yourself some time. You've now got the cash and you can now go buy. And guess what? A cash buyer sometimes has greater opportunity to get that deal done, right? Like I'm actually, I know people that are going through it right now where they're looking at the ask price and they're like, well, I'm cash. And guess what? The seller is motivated to sell. There still are plenty of people out there that have that motivation. So I think we just have to get creative and not get so caught up in the headlines, right? Because the headlines are there, the numbers are obviously there. But the creativity and the opportunity is also there. So I use that a lot. Like for instance, with this buyer who doesn't know whether she wants to buy or, you know, rent, there's one home that she's looking at and there happens to be a lockout. It happens to be the most expensive home that she's looked at. But she's like, all I would really need is that lockout. And I'm like, well, you could buy the whole house and then just live in the lockout and rent out the rest, right? Like,
What's a lockout?
so it's like
I don't know that term.
Like a mother-in-law suite, if you will, that's got its own entrance and its own door and it's like kind of self-sustaining.
Cool.
So she can use that and rent out the rest. And so that, you know, instead of a 4-bedroom home that she's not going to use the whole thing, that she can't use it when somebody else is using it, right? So even though it is the most expensive, I'm also encouraging her to think about the opportunity of like having both, right? Having an investment property and having a small place that she can come back to, that she could quote unquote, you know, like rent out herself, if you will. So it's just really getting creative and asking the questions of the listing agent, of the buyer's agent, what's their true motivation? You know, because if you, as the buyer's agent, I just had this today with the agent from that home, where she literally called me up and she said, you know what, the seller is really motivated. She'd like to start a conversation with your buyer. Meanwhile, a week ago, she's like, she's not budging. This is what it's going to be. And I knew that I could not come to a meeting of the mind. So there's fear going on here, and there's motivation in a lot of people's decisions right now. And I think there will continue to be, especially like an environment where I live, where we're going to be getting snow in about a month. And I think people will not forget the 700 inches of snow that we had last season and what digging out of that is like. So,
700 inches. Oh
yeah.
my gosh, I can't even imagine that. Well, what I love about what you're reminding us here is it's the creativity, right? Many of you here know Kendall Young and her ADU business, and she's reminded us several times of this as well, right? Like there are ways that you can actually afford a place that doesn't feel affordable. And even if it doesn't exist, there are ways to actually add additional dwelling units to your property. And so there are ways that you can be creative with your responses to those objections. And sometimes for me, I know that when I'm the one who's objecting, when I'm the one who's like, when someone plants something that creates curiosity in me, I'm sold. Like I lean in. I'm like, ooh, tell me more. What's that about? Like, how would I do that? So I think that is an excellent bit of advice, right? Reminding us all to just put on our creative thinking hats, pull out the 64 crayons and look for something fun and a different way to respond. Julie, how about you? What's your story in this space?
I run into this a lot with clients, right? Where they have that what is like their block. And this actually, as we were talking through it, reminded me of a client that I actually just spoke with yesterday. And there's this house that she wants that has just come back on the market. And she's like $25,000 off from like what her like end number is. And so part of it is like really exploring that of like, okay, well, 25,000, it's a lot of money, but like it literally is like a couple $100 a month. So like, can we pay something off so your payment's not changing? And kind of to Karen's point of like being creative with your budget and with your affordability and like, why is that mental block? As a loan originator, I do purchases, I do refinances, and I bring this up because for perspective, 25 to 30% of my business right now is actually refinance business, which I know what you're probably thinking, because I'm going to be honest, I thought it too of like, who the heck is refinancing in this marketplace? But whether it's debt consolidation, whether it's adding additions, whether it's buying second homes, investing in real estate, you know, the reality for a lot of clients, I am going to give you what I think is a fun statistic. I know the average American has $275,000 in equity in their home right now. It's over $250,000, big money, no whammies. But the average American also has about $96,000 in consumer debt at 24%. So a lot of times it's having those realistic conversations that people are not going to tell you right off the bat of like, hey, by the way, I'm struggling a little bit and things are a little bit uncomfortable, but really kind of going through and peeling those layers and having those conversations about, because the reality is if you're paying 24% on $90,000 and you're paying 2% on a mortgage, a lot of times you can move, you can upsize or downsize depending upon where you are in your life and be in a better spot financially from an affordability standpoint.
Mm,
And for me, at least a lot of the clients that I work with, affordability is what it is. Like the interest rate doesn't matter when you feel good about being able to pay your bills. And it doesn't matter if you have a 2%, if you can't make those payments or that's uncomfortable or you're eating ramen noodles or you're foregoing your family vacation, because that part doesn't matter. And again, like down the road, hopefully the rate situation will change, that then maybe you can get a little bit back closer to, where you want to be. And to me, overcoming those objections are just like, all right, well, why are you here? Like, how can we get there? And creativity is not always like a word we want in financing for loans, but like creativity in situations, kind of like where Karen was saying about it, like, how can we make this work for you based off what is really, really important to you?
mm. So good. And that is such an excellent example of why the interest rates don't necessarily negatively impact everyone, right? And where the Rocket Money app could come into play, right? Where because talking about money is uncomfortable for a lot of people, and especially if it's somebody that you've already done a transaction with. This is really important to those people who are actually out there selling homes. You become part of their lives. A lot of you, become, part of their party invite list, and you get holiday cards from them. And so the second time around, when they're getting ready to do things, they're not sharing their finances with a stranger. They're sharing their finances with a friend. Right. And so I love the reminder of it. You don't have to actually have those conversations. Partner with a loan professional that has tools that can help them kind of opt in to making the changes that they need. Because I'm still a little in shock that so many consumers have $96,000 in consumer debt. I'm like, "Dang." Like, holy smokes. But that's real. And another reason why we love statistics, right? Because it helps take the emotion out of things when you can say, like, you're not alone, because 70% of the population is experiencing what you are. So I'm really excited to hear more statistics. I want to ask one more question before we go into our final words of wisdom. And it actually is kind of on the emotionally charged side of objections. So what advice do you have for when we encounter objections that are so emotionally charged and or they're rooted in deeply held belief systems, right? I mean, deeply held, because we're talking about money again. How can we navigate those situations? It really infusing not only our empathy, but being sensitive to those emotions that are coming out in those moments. Laine, I hear you, you're like, I can hear your thoughts. Your head is shaking. So
Yeah.
let's start with you. What are your thoughts on that?
I just think, we've talked a lot about really understanding where the person on the other side of the conversation is coming from and just recognizing like it really has to be their decision. There's only so much that you can sell to them. And I kind of relate it to like dating, like not everybody's for you, and that's got to be okay. You're not for everybody either. And so sometimes you're working with a client or a lender or an agent, even on another side of a deal, and you're like, you just kind of have to bear down and get either through the deal or to choose to really consume that failure fast and just move on to another client, move on to another agent that you're recruiting. There are so many people out there that are your tribe, that are your circle, that would be great for you. But not everybody's going to be, the perfect client. Not everyone's mortgage ready. There's some people that will never get their financial stuff in line, right? And it's a waste of your time to recognize, that like you're spending so much time trying to convince somebody they're never going to change. So that would be my advice there, is really know what your boundaries are and what your standards are and where you can share, and where you can influence people, and then move on from that failure quickly, because it's not a failure on you.
Mm, such great reminders. Karen, how about you?
So I truly believe that whether it's your mom, your child, your client, you never know what's in somebody's invisible backpack. You don't know if they had a bad experience with a previous realtor, if the home that you really think they should buy has a number in the address that they have to stay away from. We don't know so much. So like I said before, we have to keep ourselves unattached from the outcome. The client really has to want it. And, if they're going through something, we have to just let them get through it, right? We can help them and we can say encouraging words like, I see you, I hear you. I'm not going to call you again for a few more days. Like I'm not going to text you at all hours of the day when a new listing comes up. I'm going to, if you're not comfortable spending that amount of money, I'll take those off the MLS alerts, like whatever that might be. Ultimately, at the end of the day, like we are not performing surgeries here, like life-saving surgeries. We're trying to sell homes, So if a client's not ready, a client's not ready. If they're not meant for us, like that's okay. I'd rather fire you and have an easy like division and divide and just like we're okay with the outcome here, and we both move on.
I love that. You've said it a couple of times in different ways, the reminder to unattach ourselves from the outcome. During the pandemic, I revisited a book called Untethered Soul that Michael Singer wrote, and he really digs into that idea of like detaching ourselves from the outcome. And so if there's anyone who's watching or listening today that's thinking like, what exactly does that mean? I mean, certainly you can Google it, but I definitely found the advice in the Untethered Soul so incredibly powerful about this exact topic, really just disconnecting yourself from what someone else's decision is going to be. Like that's not your role, right? And it's hard, right? Because we're problem solvers, right? We get up every day and we're like, who are we going to help today? And sometimes some people aren't ready to be helped. So it's such great reminders. Julie, I know you shared an article in the chat, so thanks for that. How do you feel about this? Like, what is your advice on the emotionally charged side of this equation?
Well, we've been talking a lot about moms, and it made me think of something my mom told me all the time growing up. And it was, you can't control someone's reactions. You can only control your actions, and kind of the bless and release. Bless that it happened, release it, and they're gonna. And so for me, it really just is a matter of like, look, like I'm gonna seek to understand, honor your perspective, provide you with the opportunity if there is one available, close and ask for the business, and don't burn the bridge, right? And I have a realtor friend who is a master disc trainer, if you're familiar with the disc. And so he often shares like, look, 70%, between 60 and 70% of human beings are high S's, which means they just want to be led well and be given clear and concise steps on what happens next. And, one, remembering like, we're never going to know someone's situation, but two, giving them the opportunity and then letting them say yes or no.
Yeah, that's so true. At Woman Up this year, my talk was on the idea of let them. And it's so amazing. I know there's some people here who are at the conference. I mean, every week I get a photo of something. Sometimes it's like folded towels. Sometimes it's toilet paper. I've even gotten like the way their husband parks the car, parallel parks, and how just releasing the outcome, releasing how someone else does something or how someone else decides to do something is so incredibly freeing. The idea of letting them be them, letting them fold the towels the way they want, letting them make their decision when they want to make it. You share your perspective, you find out where their perspective comes from first, ideally, right? Like, where'd you learn to fold the towels like that? Oh, your grandma. Okay, great. Like, I have grace for you now, even though I hate the way you do it. It reminds you of your granny, right? Like there's beauty in that. So many pearls of wisdom. Okay, so we are in the final four of our time together here. So let's do our around the table with final words of wisdom. If you've got books or podcasts that you recommend, we'd love to hear those. So Karen, kick us off.
I've mentioned it before. I love Phil M. Jones's book, Exactly What to Say. One of our WomanUP members is a guide, actually. So Renee Funk. So follow her, and she's constantly sharing little tidbits from Exactly What to Say.
I love that. Renee is amazing. We had her host a session for us when we were actually in 2020, when we were in the Verbella space on our magical island in the virtual world during the pandemic. So we know Renee, we love Renee. I love that. That's a great suggestion. Julie, how about you? What books or podcasts do you recommend?
So I really like the books Captivate and Cues. It's two separate, by Vanessa Van Edwards. And she really talks about like a lot of communication and face-to-face communication, and how are you like getting folks to draw. And I find that stuff fascinating. I'm also a big fan of Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall, and the fact of how we explain things and tell stories to get our point and connect with each other. And I'm currently rereading The Obstacle Is the Way by Ryan Holiday, which is a lot of like, hey, find strength in the toughness, and like, because it's hard, it's worth it. And how do you use that challenge to really be your catapult to the next, your opportunity?
I love that. Great suggestions. Laine, bring it home, sister.
I was recommended while I was at Inman a new podcast called All In, and it is for guys, but they're doing a long form. They're very intelligent. Like, I respect all of them. They're people we would be friends with. They're doing long form with all of the presidential candidates for next year. For me, it's been very easy to digest because I feel that like election news cycle coming on that I just want nothing to do with. And I'm learning a lot. I'm learning so much about what's going on, of things that maybe we just don't interact with on a day-to-day. And in the fiction world, I've been reading Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. It's coming out on, I think it's Apple TV in the next couple of weeks as a series, but it's just this fabulous story about a career woman and mother in a male dominated world, and just her journey with it. And she's so badass. Like, she is one of those people that you're like, hell yeah, sister, I'm standing right there beside you. So if you haven't read it yet, at least watch the show. I think you'll be very impressed.
No, I love that. Such great suggestions. And again, all of these titles and authors and all of that will be in the blog post recap. But if you can't wait, of course, you can reach out and connect with any of these, all three. We will share their LinkedIn profiles so that you can get connected with them. But just really quickly, does anybody have a preferred outside of LinkedIn way that you'd want people to get connected with you?
Instagram for me.
Okay.
Shoot me a text. I mean, like, however you want to reach out is fine, but a quick phone call or text works great.
Okay, if you want to drop in those links and those numbers, same for you, Julie. All right, I'm going to wrap us up. Oh my goodness, as we put Q3 to bed, it was our heart's desire to really help you, reflect and shift your perspective on the objections that are coming your way. We're stepping into the season where we are going to be networking and partying with our loved ones. And we know the conversations are going to come about what's happening in real estate and should I buy now? And so the objections are going to start flowing inside those conversations. Hopefully you feel better prepared, or at the very least, wrote down a couple of ideas of things that you're going to try in your own business. And as always, if you have questions, you get stuck, head on over to the Facebook group. We'd love to get connected with you there. It is a powerhouse place to, dig into those questions that you've got. If you're stuck, don't be stuck alone. Like, that's what this community is all about. It's all about lending a hand when someone feels like they just don't know what to do next. So until next time, we wish you all an amazing weekend ahead and look forward to seeing you next week in Q4. Take care, everyone. Thanks again, Julie and Laine and Karen, for giving us your time. We totally appreciate you. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
Debra. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.